morning. Well, but the lecture of today, the topic of today is it's very meaningful for me, and I believe it is very meaningful for every one of you, because in a sense we feel that we are in a moment of our lives we were rescued by something, a great power, a great love, a superior being, whatever you may think it is. We end up in this small room trying to find answers to the struggles that we still have inside of us. And this is a process of evolution. This is a process of acquiring the genetic spiritual essence that we were formed, built in the beginning of times. And the parable of the lost sheep, which is on the Gospel of Luke, on chapter 15, and also in the Gospel of Matthew, maybe can help us to identify ourselves as one of these lost sheep. So let's read what the parable brings to us. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. And Jesus, when he brought this parable, he always tried to relate circumstances of the current life to the circumstances of the disciples, the apostles, of the regular people that were in his presence, trying to relate events, day-to-day events, so we can relate and try to find try to connect what he is saying to our own experiences in our daily lives. But this passage, this parable, it's also very much related to one parable that is in the same chapter 15, which is the prodigal son. For many of you, I don't know if you all know about the prodigal son, but it talks pretty much the same thing, but in a different way. Because in the first parable, we see the shepherd going to find the lost sheep. And in this one, we see the prodigal son coming back to the house of the father. I guess you all know, in a certain moment of the prodigal son, he decided to go out and to live his life, getting the portion of his money from the inheritance that he has, and then simply living his life the way he wished to live his life. And then he comes back to the house of the father. And the father in the prodigal son parable not even wait for the son to come. He runs after him right in the moment that he see the son, open his arms and grab him like, that's a good thing, because someone that was lost returned to his home. So it's interesting how these two parables relate to one another. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, we all feel in a certain point of our life a little lost, trying to find peace, trying to find hope, trying to get rid of the vices that still resides inside of us. And this is a process. This is a process. I'm going to bring 3 examples very much known by you of very famous characters in the Christian history, the story of Christianity. And maybe we can relate to a few feelings that we all have in one level or another, and we can relate how the movement that Christ did towards reaching out to us, and we can relate this to the way that we move ourselves, behave in our lives. So, examples of lost sheep. I brought Judah. And we can sometimes relate to Judah too. So because Judah betrayal Christ, and sometimes we betray our sentiments, we betray people that we love, we betray our loved ones, we betray our own essence, getting away from the love that we still don't understand. How this, we still don't understand. So he felt remorse. We all feel remorse sometimes, and we felt remorse. Driven by insanity, and then he commits suicide. This we all know. It's a very famous character. And what happened on the 3rd day after the crucifixion of Christ? On the Gospel of John, we see this portion of the Gospel, and he is talking to Mary of Magdalene. Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. And we know by the Spiritist literature that the reason of this saying that Christ brought us this portion and talked to Mary of Magdalene to not touch him, it's because he went down to the lower zones to rescue Judah. Humberto de Campos, which is a spirit psychograph and who channeled the spirit is Francisco Cândido Xavier, brings us with details how this process of rescuing Judah happened. And so Jesus was already with maybe to the, how can I say?
Ethereal?
I wouldn't say this. So he has his reasons to talk to Mary of Magdalene. Don't touch me yet, because as if we went to some place, dirty place, and it still have like some residues, things on his garment. It's difficult to explain, but I don't want you to focus on this. I want you to focus on the process of the shepherd called Jesus rescuing that sheep by the name Judah. So it was someone that betrayed him, someone that betrayed in a worse sense, in a worse way, and he still loved him as if nothing happened. It's not like agreeing with the behaving of Judah, but the amount of love that he still feels by Judah, it's exactly the same. It's difficult for us to relate because we love people that love us. We cannot make this differentiation. We have this sympathy to be happy. We feel nice, rejoice to be side by side with people that feels the same way that we feel by others. But by Jesus, in Jesus' case, nothing was altered. So he simply goes to rescue his brother by the name Judah. What is the resolution? Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Let's have another case. Mary of Magdalene. We all have a little bit of Mary of Magdalene. Seduction. We play seduction games sometimes. Luxury. Longing for love, because he was desperate to find a different way of loving one another. Loving, that to feed his soul. So she was looking for something different. Battles of demons. So being obsessed by so many spirits, driving her to the same way of behaving so they can feed from her and keep coming and going at the same path of behaving. So, but she had the audacity, because she heard something about a carpenter that can give her something different than the love that she used to be having back then. And because of the channel of Divaldo Franco, in one of the books, Prelude to the Divine Kingdom, a spirit by the name Amelia Rodriguez brings us something really interesting. Amelia Rodriguez says that Jesus knew her courage, her audacity, since she had dared to come all the way to his home. Transformed since her encounter with the rabbi, she felt free from the 7 demoniacal spirits that made her so miserable. She entirely renewed. What is the resolution? I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 neighbors, righteous persons who do not need to repent. All lost sheep that once was rescued by this infinite and immense love. And I don't want to put Jesus as a character. I'm putting Jesus as a way, our destination to be. Let's have another one. Paul of Tarsus. Everybody know Paul of Tarsus. Power. He had power back then. Pride. Very pride. Christian persecutor. Yes. But in the road of Damascus, something miraculously happened. And we're going to see in the book Paul and Stephen, channeled by Francisco Cândido Xavier and given by the Spirit Emmanuel, this portion of the book. The Master calls him from his realm of immortal radiance. Paul flambeaus in the darkness of human experience and replies, Lord, what would you have me do? Between Jesus and him there was an abyss, which the apostle crossed over in decades of ongoing redemptive struggle. Resolution, because at the end of the book of Paul and Stephen, at the end of the crucifixions of Paul, like the decapitation, the beheaded of the Paul, we see something wonderful that happens when the Christ came himself to reach out to Paul of Tarsus. The Master smiled, indulgent and loving, and spoke, Yes, Paul, rejoice. Come now to my arms, for it is the will of my Father that persecutors and martyrs alike be united forever in my kingdom. This is something so powerful, because it put us in different levels of evolution, but give us the hope that one day this huge family will be united and experiencing something that we yet struggles to see. And sometimes it's like a few inches of our nose. Now let's see, because we brought here like 3 characters very well known by all of you. But let's bring something. It's a trailer of a movie that I saw yesterday by the name The Heart of Man. It's a beautiful movie. It talks about like sexual addictions and adultery and things like that. And at the end of the movie, it shows something that strikes my attention because it mentioned exactly these, the parable of the lost sheep. And let me bring you a portion of this trailer so you can be touched. And my invitation is for you to pay attention to this movie.
Many of us are still trying to prove that we are enough by the very law that tried to prove to us that we're not enough. When he calls us a saint, he makes an incredible statement about us. We are no longer defined by being a sinner.
Her best friends at the time.
When I choose to run from him into the darkness, he's with me in the room, and he's not angry, and he's in love with me deeply. And his facial expression is fixed on mine, and he's loving me.
Just about the struggle with lust. Lust is desire gone mad. So every man, every woman struggles with lust for something that fills something of our emptiness.
I see this kind of vision take over my line of sight And I remember I was in prison, and my hands were cuffed together, and I had a tray of food, and I was walking in the cafeteria in prison past all these tables, and no one would let me sit with them, and I found my own table, and I sat down, and in walks Jesus. And he's dressed in prison clothing, like me, and he sits down across the table from me, and he doesn't say anything. And I asked him, I said, will you eat another meal with me? And he said, I'll eat with you anytime you want. By the way, the door's open. You can leave anytime you want. Man, I melted. It's unconditional, unfailing, present love. But for him to be with me in my addiction and in sickness and in relapse over and over and over again, that's what changes me.
He has come to set us free to be fully human and fully alive.
He's wild about us when we sin. He's wild about us when we don't. He's wild about us in the past and the future. So God knows my sexual sin that's going to be committed 2 years from now. And he's still crazy about me. And it doesn't make it less difficult, but in many ways, it makes the taste of goodness so powerful that it's not that we're just saying no. We're actually far more saying yes to what God has for us.
The movie's already available, and it touched me in a way that says like, oh my God, it is so profound. I'm going to put the trailer at one portion of the lecture because it brings the desire of these specific people, very well-known people, of getting free of something that they still are very much attached to, as was a way of slavering their own souls and blocking them to find something that it's much bigger, as if we are billionaires, but we sell our soul for a penny. It's on the curbside of the street. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. And we are billionaires, trillionaires, because we are going to inherit this whole universe. And we still struggle. And of course, this is a part of the evolution. And when you see this movie and seeing we're no more categorized as sinners, because this is a portion of the learning process to find ourselves and to find the amount of love that it's inside of each one of us. And until we find this love, and until we find this connection with the divine, with the divinity, with the providence, and I am not talking about a religion, I am talking about religiosity that connect us to something greater than religion. Because religion, of course, is something amazing and it's very good because it's a portion of the equation. So we can see one day religiosity, which connect us with the grandiosity that we all are destined to live. And on this process, we find ourselves as lost sheep. Examples of lost sheep? I would say you and me, probably. Being rescued every day from our momentarily misery. When I say misery, I'm not diminishing the state that we are, because as I said before, it's a step by step. Initially, with ignorance and simplicity, going up and up, learning with our mistakes, and learning how to love one another as He loves us. But still, we have some sheep that doesn't want it to be found. And we know this because they have their time. Their time has to be respected. And we are in no way, shape, or form dictators of a tradition, of a religion, to impose our beliefs in them. But just as the movie mentioned, when that guy imagined himself slaved, eating in a table, and that man in his vision, dressing as him, as a prisoner, sits down in front of him and says like, are you willing to eat another meal with me? And that vision mentioned him, gives him like, in his vision, yes, I will eat in numerous meals with you. And by the way, the door is open. The door is open. So we still want to be the lost sheep. And sometimes we don't want to be found. Kai Bar-Schutel was a very well-known spiritist in the beginning of the 20th century in Brazil, in the state of São Paulo. And he brings in one of his books, The Teachings and Parables of Christ, because he tried to explain the parables of Christ. This parable clearly demonstrates that the lost souls will not be abandoned, nor stay in the labyrinth of passions, of vices. Much like the lost sheep, they will be sought after, even if this means leaving the other 99 behind, who have already reached a level of understanding as represented in the parable. This is beautiful because it brings us hope that we're not going to be left out. No matter what kind of sins that we commit. I'm putting sins in quotes because I'm not the one to label sins as we used to label sins. Kai Bar-Schutel keeps talking about this because our Father does not wish for the death of the impious, nor the condemnation of the evil person, or the unjust, or the ungrateful one. He wishes for one's regeneration, his or her salvation, a life well lived, his children's happiness. And this is so beautiful, so beautiful. He keeps talking that even if this means for our regeneration, reincarnation on earth without hands or feet, disabled or blind, due to our own past mistakes, or of deviating from the right path due to the constant trips and falls, our salvation is as certain as that of the lost sheep being sought after and saved by the Good Shepherd. Because all of us, the ones who are hurting or unsure, troubled or mistaken, have their spiritual benefactors trying to guide them back to the right path. So there is a divine providence trying to find, sometimes in the form of a friend, of a loved one, of a son, of a daughter, of someone that worked with us, trying to give us a little well, I already went through this path. Don't go this way. I have experience. And because of Jesus, or because of Christ, because in the beginning of the earth, the formation of the earth, He was already a pure spirit. He knows better than all of us. But we still sometimes don't want to be found. Isn't it true? Because what He thinks is who we are, no matter what kind of conditions we are feeling at this moment, matters for Him. And what we are becoming matters for Him. Because if we are deviating from the path of finding joys, love matters for him. But he respects our time. And to be honest with you, we are the ones that he left 99 to go find. We are. We are. To close this talk, I would like to bring a psalm, a David's psalm, the Psalm 23, so we can feel a little comfort and hoping that nothing is out of control. Even though it takes a little time, everything will be in its right place. The psalm says the Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. He loves us so much. He doesn't want to leave us in the room that we make for ourselves because of our ignorance. You understand this? It takes a while for us to understand this, sometimes many incarnations. But one day, we will embrace this as if this is the last and ultimate truth, because in fact, it is the love calling our names once more, once again. Thank you very much. Questions?